Let me begin with a question. What if the very ambition that once energized you is now the thing that exhausts you? What if the drive that pushed you forward has quietly turned into pressure, and the passion you once felt has been replaced by fatigue? Burnout does not arrive with an announcement. It does not knock loudly at the door, it whispers. It slowly replaces enthusiasm with obligation. It turns goals into burdens. It steals energy, clarity, and joy without asking permission. And here is the real danger. Many high performers mistake burnout for weakness. They think the answer is to work harder, push more, sleep less, grind deeper. But burnout is not solved by intensity. It is solved by intelligence. In this talk, I will show you why burnout happens even to the most ambitious people, how to reverse it without abandoning your goals, and how to build a life where energy is renewable, motivation is natural, and success does not cost you your health. If you stay with me, you will learn not just how to escape exhaustion, but how to design a rhythm of life that fuels you for decades. Because success without balance is temporary, but success with balance is unstoppable. Let's begin. Let us examine a hard truth. Ambition by itself is not enough. In fact, unmanaged ambition can become your greatest liability. Most burnout does not happen because someone lacks drive. It happens because someone has drive without direction, effort without boundaries, intensity without structure. Think about this carefully. If you pour water into a glass, it serves you. If you pour that same water onto the floor, it creates a mess. The difference is structure. Success works the same way. Effort must be contained within systems or it spills into exhaustion. Highly driven individuals often live reactively. They wake up and immediately respond to emails, messages, demands, and deadlines. Their day is shaped by urgency rather than intention. They confuse activity with achievement. But activity without structure produces fatigue faster than results. Here is how self-destruction quietly begins. First, you say yes to opportunities. Then you say yes to expectations. Then you say yes to pressure. Eventually, you are no longer choosing your workload. It is choosing you. And the very qualities that once made you exceptional, your reliability, your hunger, your willingness, become the reason you are overwhelmed. Let me define structure clearly. Structure is protection. It is a framework that determines when you work, what you work on, how long you work, when you stop. Notice that last part, when you stop. Most ambitious people are excellent at starting. Few are disciplined at stopping. Without stopping points, when work is endless, recovery disappears. When recovery disappears, energy collapses. Burnout is not an emotional failure. It is a systems failure. You did not design your effort. You allowed it to expand beyond capacity. Imagine an athlete training intensely every single day without rest. No coach would allow it. The body would break down. Performance would decline. Injury would follow. Yet professionals, entrepreneurs, students, and leaders do exactly that with their mental energy. They operate without cycles. Structure introduces cycles. Deep work followed by recovery. Growth followed by reflection. Commitment followed by recalibration. This rhythm is what sustains long-term success. Now let's address another misconception. Many people resist structure because they believe it limits freedom. They say, I don't want rigid routines, I want flexibility. But understand, this lack of structure does not create freedom. It creates chaos. True freedom comes from knowing your priorities and designing your schedule around them. When your day has structure, you eliminate unnecessary decisions. You reduce mental clutter. You conserve willpower. You prevent overcommitment. Decision fatigue alone is a hidden driver of burnout. Every unplanned choice drains cognitive energy. Structure removes trivial decisions so your energy can be invested in meaningful ones. There is also an emotional dimension to this. When you lack structure, you constantly feel behind. There is always something undone, something pending, something urgent. Your mind never rests because it cannot see the edges of your responsibility. Structure creates psychological closure. When you define clear work windows and clear rest windows, your brain learns when to engage and when to disengage. Stress decreases. Focus improves. Without structure, work invades every space. Evenings become extensions of deadlines. Weekends become catch-up sessions. Vacations become remote offices. This is not dedication. It is diffusion. The most successful individuals are not those who work the most hours. They are those who work the most intentional hours. They build frameworks, clear daily priorities, define project scopes, pre-scheduled recovery time, non-negotiable personal boundaries. They understand a simple law: what is not scheduled will be sacrificed. If recovery is not scheduled, it disappears. If focus time is not scheduled, distraction wins. If boundaries are not scheduled, other people set them for you. Structure is not about doing less. It is about deciding what deserves your best. When ambition is contained within disciplined systems, it multiplies results without multiplying stress. When ambition runs wild without structure, it consumes the very person who created it. So if you feel burnout approaching, do not question your capability, question your structure. Refine it, design it, protect it. Because success without structure is temporary. But success supported by structure becomes sustainable, and sustainability is what turns potential into legacy. Let us examine a hard truth. Ambition by itself is not enough. In fact, unmanaged ambition can become your greatest liability. Most burnout does not happen because someone lacks drive. It happens because someone has drive without direction, effort without boundaries, intensity without structure. Think about this carefully. If you pour water into a glass, it serves you. If you pour that same water onto the floor, it creates a mess. The difference is structure. Success works the same way. Effort must be contained within systems, or it spills into exhaustion. Highly driven individuals often live reactively. They wake up and immediately respond to emails, messages, demands, and deadlines. Their day is shaped by urgency rather than intention. They confuse activity with achievement. But activity without structure produces fatigue faster than results. Here is how self-destruction quietly begins. First, you say yes to opportunities. Then you say yes to expectations. Then you say yes to pressure. Eventually, you are no longer choosing your workload. It is choosing you. And the very qualities that once made you exceptional, your reliability, your hunger, your willingness, become the reason you are overwhelmed. Let me define structure clearly. Structure is not restriction. Structure is protection. It is a framework that determines when you work, what you work on, how long you work, when you stop. Notice that last part, when you stop. Most ambitious people are excellent at starting. Few are disciplined at stopping. Without stopping points, when work is endless, recovery disappears. When recovery disappears, energy collapses. Burnout is not an emotional failure. It is a systems failure. You did not design your effort. Imagine an athlete training intensely every single day without rest. No coach would allow it. The body would break down. Performance would decline. Injury would follow. Yet professionals, entrepreneurs, students, and leaders often do exactly that with their mental energy. They operate without cycles. Structure introduces cycles. Deep work followed by recovery. Growth followed by reflection. Commitment followed by recalibration. This rhythm is what sustains long-term success. Now let's address another misconception. Many people resist structure because they believe it limits freedom. They say, I don't want rigid routines. I want flexibility. But understand this, lack of structure does not create freedom. It creates chaos. True freedom comes from knowing your priorities and designing your schedule around them. When your day has structure, you eliminate unnecessary decisions. You reduce mental clutter. You conserve willpower. You prevent overcommitment. Decision fatigue alone is a hidden driver of burnout. Every unplanned choice drains cognitive energy. Structure removes trivial decisions so your energy can be invested in meaningful ones. There is also an emotional dimension to this. When you lack structure, you constantly feel behind. There is always something undone, something urgent. Your mind never rests because it cannot see the edges of your responsibility. Structure creates psychological closure. When you define clear work windows and clear rest windows, your brain learns when to engage and when to disengage. Stress decreases, focus improves. Without structure, work invades every space. Evenings become extensions of deadlines. Weekends become catch-up sessions. Vacations become remote offices. This is not dedication, it is diffusion. The most successful individuals are not those who work the most hours. They are those who work the most intentional hours. They build frameworks, clear daily priorities, defined project scopes, pre-scheduled recovery time, non-negotiable personal boundaries. They understand a simple law. What is not scheduled will be sacrificed. If recovery is not scheduled, it disappears. If focus time is not scheduled, distraction wins. If boundaries are not scheduled, other people set them for you. Structure is not about doing less. It is about deciding what deserves your best. When ambition is contained within disciplined systems, it multiplies results without multiplying stress. When ambition runs wild without structure, it consumes the very person who created it. So if you feel burnout approaching, do not question your capability. Question your structure. Refine it, design it, protect it. Because success without structure is temporary. But success supported by structure becomes sustainable, and sustainability is what turns potential into legacy. Let us elevate the conversation. Most people say, I don't have enough time. But time is rarely the real problem. The real problem is depleted energy. You can have a full day available and accomplish very little if you are mentally drained. On the other hand, you can accomplish extraordinary work in a short period when your energy is high, focused, and directed. Energy, not time, determines output. And yet, most people manage their calendars more carefully than they manage their vitality. If you treated your financial capital the way you treat your energy, you would be bankrupt. Let's examine this with precision. Energy functions like capital in 4 critical ways. It can be invested, it can be wasted, it can generate returns, it must be replenished. Every task you perform is either an investment or an expense. Some activities multiply your energy, meaningful progress on a key goal, focus, uninterrupted deep work, exercise, quality sleep, constructive conversations. Other activities drain it disproportionately, multitask scrolling, unclear priorities, negative social interactions, reactive decision making. The issue is not that draining tasks exist. The issue is that most people do not account for them. High performers audit their time. Ultra-successful performers audit their energy. They ask strategic questions. When during the day am I at peak cognitive capacity? Which tasks require high-level thinking? Which tasks can be automated or delegated? Which interactions consistently exhaust me? They do not schedule randomly, they schedule according to biological rhythm. Your mind has peak hours. Your body has recovery cycles. Ignoring them creates friction. Aligning with them creates flow. For example, if your highest mental clarity occurs in the morning, that is not the time for email. That is the time for strategic thinking. Reserve your premium energy for premium decisions. Never spend prime energy on trivial matters. Now let's address something subtle but critical: energy leaks. Energy rarely collapses all at once. It leaks gradually. It leaks when you stay up late repeatedly, carry unresolved emotional tension, enter tasks without clear objectives, leave tasks unfinished and open-ended. Open loops consume cognitive bandwidth. Every unfinished decision sits in the background of your mind, draining focus. Clarity closes loops. Closure restores energy. There is also emotional energy to consider. Resentment drains energy. Comparison drains energy. Uncertainty drains energy. Peace restores energy. Purpose restores energy. Progress restores energy. That is why momentum is so powerful. When you see progress, even small progress, your energy increases. When you feel stuck, your energy declines. So what is the solution? Adopt an energy investment mindset. Before committing to a task or obligation, ask, will this generate energy in the long term or consume it without return? Sometimes intense effort is required. That is not the problem. The problem arises when high output is not balanced with strategic renewal. Elite investors diversify their portfolio. You must diversify your energy portfolio. You need physical renewal, mental renewal, strategic renewal. When one category is neglected, the system destabilizes. Let me be direct. Burnout is not a mystery. It is arithmetic. If energy expenditure consistently exceeds energy recovery, collapse is inevitable. The disciplined individual monitors this equation daily. At the end of each day, ask, did today build capacity or reduce it? And if it reduced it, where must I compensate? Energy is not infinite, but it is renewable if managed intentionally. Treat it like capital. Invest it wisely. Eliminate waste. Protect your reserves. Replenish consistently. When you begin to think in terms of energy economics rather than time management, you stop chasing hours and start creating impact. And that shift alone can move you from burnout back to balance. Let us confront one of the most damaging myths in modern achievement culture. Rest is something you earn. Many high performers treat rest like dessert, something indulgent, something optional, something to be enjoyed only after complete exhaustion. But here is the reality. Rest is not a reward for work done. It is a prerequisite for work done well. If you misunderstand this principle, burnout becomes inevitable. Consider how elite performers operate. Professional athletes do not train intensely 7 days a week without pause. Their coaches schedule recovery as carefully as they schedule exertion. Why? Because performance improves during recovery, not during exertion. The strain creates stimulus, recovery creates growth. The same biological and psychological principle applies to mental performance. When you work intensely, neural pathways are stressed. Cognitive resource systems are activated. Without deliberate recovery, stress accumulates. Decision quality declines, emotional regulation weakens, creativity narrows, motivation fades, and then people say, I've lost my drive. No, you have lost your recovery. Let's define rest correctly. Rest is not mindless distraction. Scrolling endlessly is not recovery. Passive consumption is not restoration. True rest is intentional disengagement from demand. There are 3 primary forms of restorative rest. 1, physical recovery. Sleep is not negotiable. It is biological maintenance. During deep sleep, memory consolidates, hormonal balance resets, cellular repair occurs, cognitive performance is restored. Chronic sleep restriction creates a false sense of productivity. You may extend working hours, but output quality decreases while stress increases. Movement also matters. Gentle exercise, walking, stretching, these increase circulation and accelerate recovery. Physical stagnation often amplifies mental fatigue. To mental recovery, your brain requires periods of low stimulation. Constant input, emails, notifications, meetings, noise keeps the nervous system activated. Strategic pauses restore clarity. This can include scheduled deep breathing, silent reflection, interrupted breaks without devices, time in nature. Mental recovery allows the prefrontal cortex, responsible for high-level thinking, to reset. Without it, decision fatigue accumulates. 3, emotional recovery. Emotional labor is one of the most underestimated drains of energy. Managing expectations, resolving conflict, suppressing frustration, these consume internal resources. Emotional recovery requires honest conversations, journaling, meaningful connection, time alone for recalibration. When emotional tension is unresolved, rest feels ineffective because the nervous system remains activated. Now consider this strategic shift. Instead of asking, have I worked enough to deserve rest? Ask, have I recovered enough to perform at my best? That question changes everything. Rest becomes proactive, not reactive. Burnout occurs when rest is delayed until breakdown. Balance occurs when rest is embedded into your system before depletion. High achievers must also understand the concept of diminishing returns. Beyond a certain threshold, additional effort produces less output. After prolonged cognitive strain, productivity can drop dramatically, sometimes by 30–40%, even if hours increase. More time does not always mean more results. Sometimes the highest performing decision is to stop. Stopping preserves tomorrow's excellence. There is also a psychological benefit to structured rest. When recovery is scheduled, you eliminate guilt. You are not escaping work. You are following design. You are respecting the system that sustains achievement. This builds confidence because you know you are not abandoning your ambition. You are protecting it. Balance does not weaken discipline. It strengthens it. The disciplined individual understands effort and recovery are partners. They alternate intentionally, work intensely, rest deliberately, return stronger. This rhythm creates longevity. Without recovery, motivation becomes forced. You push yourself forward. With recovery, motivation becomes natural. You feel pulled forward. That is the difference between survival and sustainability. If you want to reclaim energy, stop treating rest as luxury. Treat it as infrastructure, because the most powerful individuals are not the ones who never pause. Let us address a source of burnout that is rarely diagnosed correctly. It is not always workload that exhausts you. It is ambiguity. Unclear goals, undefined priorities, competing expectations, constant shifting direction. Confusion is emotionally expensive. When you wake up without defined focus, your brain immediately enters decision mode. What should I work on? What matters most? What can wait? Every unresolved question consumes cognitive bandwidth. This is called decision fatigue, and it quietly drains motivation long before the day is over. Clarity, on the other hand, conserves energy. When you know exactly what matters, you stop negotiating with yourself. You stop bouncing between tasks. You stop second-guessing your direction. Energy that was previously spent on uncertainty becomes available for execution. Let's analyze this precisely. Emotional fatigue often stems from three types of ambiguity. 1. Goal ambiguity. If your long-term objectives are vague, every short-term decision feels heavy. You cannot measure progress against a blurred target. Without a defined destination, all effort feels uncertain. Clarity requires specificity. Not "I want success," but "I want to achieve X within Y time frame." When your objective is defined, your brain relaxes. It understands direction. Motivation increases because progress becomes visible. Progress fuels energy. 2. Priority ambiguity. Many people attempt to treat everything as important, but when everything is important, nothing is prioritized. This creates constant internal tension. You feel pulled in multiple directions. Even when working, you worry about what you are not doing. That emotional tension accumulates. Clarity demands hierarchy. At any given time, only a few things truly deserve your best attention. Define the single most important outcome this quarter, the 3 priorities this month, the 1 essential task today. When priority is clear, distraction loses power. Focus becomes simpler. Emotional pressure decreases. 3. Identity ambiguity. This is deeper. If you are unclear about who you are becoming, burnout accelerates. Why? Because effort feels disconnected from meaning. When work aligns with identity, when it reflects who you choose to be, energy multiplies. When work conflicts with identity, motivation declines. Clarity of identity answers questions like, what kind of professional am I building myself into? What standards do I live by? What do I refuse to compromise? Identity clarity reduces internal conflict. Now let us consider the neurological aspect. The brain seeks predictability, activates stress responses. Chronic ambiguity keeps cortisol levels elevated. Elevated stress impairs focus, mood stability, and sleep, all contributors to burnout. Clarity lowers stress. It tells your nerves a plan, and the human mind performs best within structured intention. Clarity also simplifies decisions. When you know your values and priorities, saying no becomes easier. Boundaries strengthen naturally. You do not experience guilt for declining distractions because you understand your direction. Emotional fatigue often comes from overcommitment combined with underdefinition. You commit to too much because you have not clearly defined what matters most. The solution is strategic simplification. Review your commitments. Ask, does this align with my defined objectives? Does this move me toward my primary outcome? Or is this activity driven by habit, fear, or external pressure? Every misaligned commitment consumes emotional energy. Eliminating 1 unnecessary obligation can restore more motivation than adding 5 productivity tools. Clarity creates calm. Calm increases focus. Focus accelerates progress. Progress restores confidence, and confidence renews motivation. Balance is not only about reducing workload, it is about reducing confusion. When your mind is no longer cluttered by competing demands, your emotional reserves stabilize. You feel lighter, not because you are doing less, but because you are doing what matters. And when your effort is concentrated rather than scattered, burnout loses its grip. Clarity does not just improve productivity, it protects your energy at its source. Define your direction. Simplify your priorities, align your identity, and watch how quickly emotional fatigue transforms into steady momentum. Burnout is rarely caused by a single overwhelming event. It is usually the result of small boundary violations repeated consistently. You say yes when you mean no. You extend your workday just this once. You answer messages during personal time. You accept responsibilities that do not align with your priorities. Individually, these decisions feel harmless. Collectively, they erode your energy, your focus, and your self-respect. Let us define boundaries clearly. Boundaries are not walls. They are filters. They determine what you allow into your time, your attention, and your emotional space. Without boundaries, Your life becomes open access. Anyone's urgency becomes your obligation. Anyone's expectation becomes your pressure. And over time, you stop living intentionally, you start reacting continuously. That is the breeding ground of burnout. Now, understand this principle. Every time you fail to protect a boundary, you teach others how to treat your time. If you respond instantly to every message, people expect instant access. If you accept unreasonable deadlines, they become standard. If you sacrifice recovery repeatedly, your exhaustion becomes normalized. Boundaries are established through behavior, not announcements. You do not enforce them by explaining. You enforce them by acting consistently. There are three major boundary categories that directly affect burnout. 1. Time boundaries. Time is finite. When you allow it to be fragmented by interruptions, context switching increases cognitive strain. Protect blocks of focused work, protect non-working hours, protect recovery periods. If your workday has no defined end, your nervous system never fully disengages. Chronic activation leads to fatigue. Set clear work windows and honor them. Ending your workday intentionally is not laziness. It is neurological maintenance. 2. Task boundaries. Not every opportunity deserves your involvement. High achievers often struggle here. They want to contribute, help grow, expand. But without task boundaries, workload escalates beyond sustainability. Before accepting new responsibilities, ask, does this align with my primary objective? Do I have the capacity to execute this well? What will I remove if I add this? If you add without subtracting, overload becomes inevitable. Strategic people understand trade-offs. Every commitment replaces another potential use of energy. Boundaries require subtraction. Now let us confront the real obstacle: fear. People avoid setting boundaries because they fear disappointing others, missing opportunities, appearing uncommitted, losing approval. But here is the reality. If you do not protect your limits, burnout will enforce them for you, and burnout is far less polite. When exhaustion forces withdrawal, relationships strain, performance declines, health suffers. They are proactive self-respect, and there is a paradox here. When you protect your boundaries consistently, people respect you more, not less. Clarity creates predictability. Predictability builds trust. If you are always available, your availability loses value. If you are selectively available, your time becomes respected. The most productive individuals are not those who are accessible at all times. They are those who guard their focus with discipline. Protecting boundaries also restores motivation. Why? Because motivation declines when autonomy disappears. If your schedule feels externally controlled, resentment builds. When you regain control over your time and commitments, intrinsic drive returns. Autonomy fuels energy. Balance is not achieved by hoping others will reduce demands. It is achieved by deciding what you will and will not accept. You train the world how to interact with you. Protect your time. Protect your focus. Protect your emotional capacity, not defensively, but strategically, because your future productivity, health, and clarity depend on the standards you enforce today. Burnout grows where boundaries are weak. Balance thrives where boundaries are strong. There is a moment in every ambitious person's journey when they must pause and ask a dangerous question. What am I really chasing? Because if you do not define success intentionally, the world will define it for you. And the world's definition is often incomplete. It measures income, recognition, titles, status. It celebrates expansion, acceleration, achievement. But it rarely measures peace of mind, physical vitality, emotional stability, quality of relationships, alignment with values. If your definition of success excludes these elements, burnout is not an accident. It is a predictable outcome. Many people climb ladders without examining where they are leaning. They pursue metrics they never consciously selected. They inherit expectations from culture, family, industry, social comparison. And then one day, after years of effort, they arrive at achievement exhausted, disconnected, and wondering why fulfillment feels distant. That is success redefining you. It slowly reshapes your habits, your schedule, your identity, until productivity becomes your only measure of worth. Let us be precise. If your self-value depends solely on output, you will never feel finished. There will always be more to prove, more to accomplish, more to secure. That constant proving is emotionally unsustainable. Redefining success requires internal clarity. Ask yourself, what does a successful life look like beyond income? What level of health do I consider non-negotiable? What relationships must remain strong? What kind of energy do I want to feel daily? Success must include sustainability. If achievement costs your health, it is not success. If advancement destroys relationships, it is not success. If progress erodes peace, it is not success. It is imbalance disguised as ambition. True success integrates performance and well-being. This does not mean lowering standards. It means expanding them. Instead of measuring only outcomes, measure alignment. Alignment between your work and your values, your schedule and your priorities, your goals and your identity. When alignment exists, effort feels meaningful. When it is absent, effort feels draining. There is also a strategic advantage here. Sustainable success compounds. When you protect your health, you extend your productive years. When you preserve relationships, you build emotional resilience. When you maintain clarity, you make better long-term decisions. Short bursts of extreme output may generate rapid results, but without sustainability, those gains erode. Longevity wins Consider high-level performers in any field. The ones who last decades are not the ones who burn brightest for a moment. They are the ones who design rhythm into their lives. They understand that energy must be renewed, not consumed recklessly. Redefining success also shifts your motivation from external validation to internal standards. External validation is unstable. It fluctuates. It depends on perception. Internal standards are stable. They are governed by your values and discipline. When your drive is internally anchored, you do not overextend to impress. You do not sacrifice balance to compete. You pursue excellence, not approval. This shift reduces emotional volatility. You stop chasing comparison. You start building mastery. Balance is not about shrinking your ambition. It is about strengthening your foundation. When success includes health, clarity, purpose, and relationships, motivation becomes more resilient because you are no longer running from insufficiency. You are building from intention. Before burnout redefines your limits, redefine your metrics. Decide what winning truly means. Decide how you want to feel while achieving. Decide what you refuse to sacrifice. When success is defined holistically, balance stops being a separate goal. It becomes part of the achievement itself. And that is when energy returns, not because you are doing less,